and welcome back to another episode of The Round Table. I know Friday nights are y'all favorite nights by now, right? If not, it will be. So let me tell y'all, tonight I'm excited because I have some guests on here that are going to talk about something that I'm not knowledgeable about. Okay, so I'm going to definitely be learning. And if you are watching tonight, please engage and ask your questions. I'm going to introduce them briefly, but then I'm going to let them tell y'all more about themselves and why they are qualified to speak on this topic tonight. Tonight, our topic is about science and how it affects our daily lives. I am one of those people that didn't have a great appreciation for science when I was in school, but as I've gotten older, I can definitely appreciate it. And so let's all learn together. And with no further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Taylor and Felicia. Felicia, tell the people who you are and what you do, love.
Hi, everybody. My name is Felicia. I'm a research safety officer at a hospital in Boston. What research safety officers do is we just make sure that laboratories are conducting their research in a way that's compliant with government regulations. I currently hold a master's degree in geology and a graduate certificate in hydrology. So I think I can say a little something about science.
You can say a lot of something about science. Taylor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor. I'm currently employed as a project engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers in Florida. I also have a master's degree in geology. Felicia and I actually went to the same university. That's how we know each other. I also have a bachelor's in geology. I just woke up one day and I was just like, I don't want to do this musical theater stuff anymore. What are these rocks doing? These are not these rocks look really cool. I want to figure out what's going on with them. And so over the course, I learned more about the scientific method and how science is applied. And more of the avenue of first it was rocks and volcanoes and earthquakes, and then I kind of narrowed it down to I really want to live at the beach. So I specialized in coastal geology. And here I am.
He studied mangroves and did his thesis on mangroves and how important they are to beach ecosystems.
Yeah, I would never have figured about 15 years ago when I was like, I need to get into academics. I need to get into science. I would have gone, all right, I think volcanoes are cool to, I think mangroves are really neat. You went from a geologist to a treeologist. I don't know. But now I work with dredging channels and whatnot. I review contracts that we have with the government sends out contracts. They're like, hey, we need you guys to dredge this channel right here in this bay, keep it open for the military and for commercial watercraft, etc. And then I come in, I'm like, all right, that's wrong. That's wrong. Okay, that's right. Okay, go ahead.
And I essentially babysit researchers and make sure they don't release anything into our environment or blow their lab up.
Oh, wow. So y'all both work in the regulations. That's what I summarized.
Okay. Currently, yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So I usually, if you're watching, post where you're watching from. I love to shout out my viewers. If you're watching later on, you can still post where you're watching from so I can see who's watching. I got a few questions I'm gonna start off with, and if you're watching and you have questions, feel free to post them and they will answer them because I am not the expert tonight. Okay, I'm gonna stay in my lane. So, one of the first questions that I have, many people hear about science, but they don't truly understand how it works. Can you break down the scientific method in simple terms?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, the scientific method is you observing a system or just observing something. And then you do background research, right, to kind of figure out information about what you observed. The next thing you do is you're going to generate what is called a hypothesis. And what that is just a question that you can actually test. Then you develop an experiment to try to disprove that hypothesis in every way. So the word disprove is very important because what people think is that us scientists go around and we're just trying to prove everything we say. and that's not the case. We're actually working very hard to disprove our hypothesis. And then if we've done everything we can and we've thrown everything at it and it still holds up, then we say, okay, well, this can be a theory. It turns into scientific theory. If over time the theory holds true after constantly having stuff thrown at it, constantly people trying to disprove it, then we say, wow, well, this must be a fundamental law of nature. So we go, this actually can be a law.
Wow. So it goes from a hypothesis, like a experiment, to a theory, and then a law. Correct?
Well, you make a hypothesis. So you say, I don't know, the sky is blue, or this pillow's soft because it's made of cotton. Then you devise some experiments to test that. It has to be something you can test, and you test it and you test it. And if that hypothesis just can't be disproven, if the pillow is actually soft because it's made of cotton, then you would say, okay, well, this is a theory. But then Taylor's going to come along and he's going to test my theory. He's going to test it to death.
I'm going to say, let me look at your methods real quick here. You only just patted the pillow. I don't think that's enough rigorous research for you to definitively say that that's cotton. I'm going to put forward a challenging hypothesis. I think it's full of feathers.
And then he's going to test it, and he's going to see if it's full of feathers. And if indeed that pillow is full of feathers, then guess what? My hypothesis, it gets thrown out the window. The theory's gone. It's actually called the theory of multiple working hypothesis, right? But my wrong hypothesis or my wrong theory was still a contribution to science because Taylor was able to build on it, right? If it wasn't for me saying, oh, these are made of cotton, and me putting forth an experiment, then he would have never thought to build off that experiment. So even theories or hypotheses that are disproven are still important, because what they do is they show us what we shouldn't be looking at, and they help steer us in the right direction of what we should be looking at.
Right. It's grown out of, I like to describe it as the scientific method grew out of our natural, as humans, as animals, as conscious beings that interact with this world, basically not going with our initial assumptions about stuff. We want to actually understand what is going on beyond just the immediate effect. Like, why are there clouds in the sky? Why is the lightning striking? Why is this happening? What is going on there? Why does this rock look so cool? What is going on with that? I think it looks cool because it's got oil on it. Oh, can we test that? Let's test it. Okay, we want to take some, we're going to take a little drill, and we're going to look at it, and we're going to put some.
Uh-oh.
Taylor, you
went out. He can't hear.
Taylor, we can't.
Now you're back. I think. So, no, it's out.
Oh, no. There you go.
Let me try
I
this
just
real
want to hear
quick.
everything he just said, okay? Like,
I know, because he was going at it. Like, I missed it.
As soon as I realized there wasn't any background sound, I was like, oh, they can't. Oh, yeah, it's going to be, I don't know what's going on. It's going to be doing that for a while. Hopefully. Okay, so I was just like, why does this rock look so cool? Why does this happen? Why does that thing? And it's really just about avoiding those assumptions, avoiding the magical thinking, essentially. And so when we're able to take that scientific method, and the most important part of it, I say, is the repeatable experiment. You can take this experiment and somebody else can come along and do it. And when they do it and they get a different result, it's like, oh, well, that's interesting. Or if they get the same result, it's kind of like, oh, okay, so this is working. And so.
Oh, no. Okay, going on again. Yep, it came in, and now it's on mute. Let's unmute.
he is so trying to figure this out.
Now you're actually on mute. Unmute. There.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Here we go.
I can't hear you, so I'm just
You
going to
can't hear
blather
me?
for a little bit and I'm going to stop talking. Okay. So the most important thing about those, so you have these repeatable experiments. You can give it to another laboratory or even regular people and be like, okay, you try it. You think it's so cool, you try it for yourself. And so you go ahead and do it, and then you're able to, if you get the same result or if you get different result, that adds to our body of knowledge. And the reason why that's so important, having those repeatable experiments, is that we start connecting to all of the other people in the world. And through little incremental steps, you build up from where we were roughly 400 years ago, where the fastest way of communicating was by sending a guy on a horse with a letter, to now where we're able to have these conversations all across the world because of all these people, thousands to hundreds of thousands of people over centuries coming together and basically incrementing our knowledge base bit by bit by bit, like a Lego set.
Yes, and it's so important what Taylor said, because I want to bring up a point. A lot of people say, oh God, those scientists don't know what they're talking about. It's always changing. They say this one week and then they say that the next week. And that's what science is. It's a living body of knowledge. It's always going to change. It's the evolution between humans and our understanding of the physical world.
Right, exactly.
Wow, that's interesting. The next question was, why is the scientific method so important, and how does it help us separate fact from opinion? And what was interesting is that you said, you try to prove the hypothesis wrong, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. I mean, I took chemistry and biology, but I ain't really pay attention. But I thought we was trying to prove something right, but you're trying to find some, I like that. That's interesting. So how does it help separate fact from opinion? Or y'all already pretty much explained that. I don't want to be repeating.
Well, I could add on to it a little bit more. When you've got that hypothesis, you want to poke as many holes as you can yourself into it. Because, say, I give that experiment to Felicia, she's going to poke a whole lot of holes in it.
Right.
And so you don't want that.
Science is peer-reviewed as well. So it's not like if I'm a blogger on YouTube and I say, I make some sort of grand declaration, but nobody's questioning that, right? This is what I'm saying and this is what it is. Well, the thing with science is, if I write something, it has to be peer reviewed before it can even be published. That means many other scientists have to look at it and also try to disprove it and poke holes in it. And then if it stands true, if it holds up through everybody throwing daggers at it, we then say, okay, there must be something to this. The same results are being repeated. Perhaps this is something that we can say is a theory.
So what makes it go from a theory to being a law? I know theories can be changed, but I've also seen laws be challenged, due to different types of innovations and technologies. They're able to test certain hypotheses that were probably tested 100 years ago, and now they're finding different findings. So what differentiates the theory to it being a law?
So it's, do you want me to go or shall you go?
Go on.
So the one that people know the most about is the law of gravity. I take this phone, and by the law of gravity, it says what goes up must come down. Well, there it is. The problem with the hard distinction of the law, though, is that it can be challenged. What we thought were the mathematics behind gravity even 50 years ago are getting rewritten by basically our understanding of more of the elementary natures of the universe. Now that's some quantum stuff that we don't necessarily have the time to get into. That's all this stuff like gravity wells and how time dilates and it's all this almost science fiction stuff.
So
but it's
can
slowly
I just
becoming
mention
science
something
fact.
about that too? And then, so like Taylor said, we know that if you drop something, it falls. But we really don't know what gravity is, right? We know that big objects in the universe warp space-time, things get caught inside of their of the warping of space-time, and it expresses itself as gravity. We know that. But actually, fundamentally, on a quantum level, what is gravity? We don't know that. We believe there's a fictional, well, not a fictional, but a theoretical particle called a graviton, but we have not yet interacted with that particle. Quantum string theory says that gravity is like, it actually manifests from other dimensions. So we just don't know, right? And then people hear that and they'll hear exactly what I said, and they'll go, so there's no such thing as gravity. No, gravity is a very real thing. We just don't have a complete understanding of its mechanisms on a subatomic level. And so I say that to say that when you are presented with the scientific theory, right, there's going to be holes in everything because we don't know. We'll never, even a million years from now, science will still be evolving because we're never going to know everything.
Right. We're only humans fundamentally, and we are able to make tools and computers and these institutions that help us make these observations. But at the end of the day, we're just a couple of, primates going, oh, it did it again.
That fell.
Oh, wow. So we understand how gravity works, but we don't understand, like you said, what makes gravity per se.
What is like what is it?
We can see its effects, but why gravity do that?
Right. That's interesting.
Where's it coming from? Who gave it to us? Can they take it back?
Where's our anti-gravity? I was told there'd be flying cars by now.
Yeah.
Where's the cars?
I really did. I could have sworn when I watched the Jetsons years ago, I figured by the time I got to this age, we'll be flying cars. And I'm sure they exist somewhere, but I thought it would be kind of like a universal thing by now. So, like I said, most people don't think about science beyond a classroom or lab. How does it actually impact our daily lives?
I guess the easy question to answer would be, how does it not impact your daily life?
Okay, well, look, maybe the second question, what are some everyday products or technologies that we use that wouldn't exist without scientific research? Or is that still pretty much everything?
That, right there. I'm pointing to the light behind me.
The light, the cell phone, this podcast, the internet, the clothes you have on, and the understanding that we have of textiles, because I'm sure it weren't hand woven, but it was done by some sort of machine that some engineer had to design. There is,
we've had clothing for tens of thousands of years, but they haven't been machined like this before. If we didn't have those incremental steps that I mentioned before of people sharing their knowledge on how to do stuff, at some point, way in the past, somebody was like, why don't we try these little plant fibers to start like maybe we can do the same stuff we do with ropes and kind of make them into knots and stuff, and maybe we can make clothes out of that. And that over time, through the eventual runaway knowledge creation, we're able to make these double woven, really nice machined shirts that we don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours just carefully weaving and sewing and knitting and whatnot.
Wow. I just wanted to shout out Erica. Hi, Erica. She had commented, say hello. This is
hello.
Hi, Erica.
I would have never thought that I would be interested in this topic. I thought I was going to just be sitting here asking the question, letting y'all talk, but y'all really got my attention. And I hear Felicia talk about science a lot. But when she told me she was going to have somebody else up here with her, I was like, that's great, because I know y'all can converse a whole lot more on it than I would have been able to engage in it. So I appreciate y'all for both taking y'all time out to be up here this evening. And I'm actually learning something. And I might be liking science a little bit more than I thought.
Oh, absolutely. The problem with science is that we don't always have the best teachers showing us how science, I never really got math, which is a very important fundamental aspect of science, until very late in my school career, just because all the teachers I had at that point made it horrifically boring.
And I will tell you, you have never sat through a science class until you sat through one of Taylor's.
Look, his energy is just like, I want to hear everything he got to say. Like if he was my biology or chemistry teacher. But then again, my mindset was different. I'm like about to be 40. I was taking this when I was 14, 15 years old. You know, my mindset wasn't there. But I mean, I never thought I'd really be interested in science. But I was really excited about this episode tonight. So misinformation spreads fast. How can people determine whether scientific claims they see online are actually credible?
Taylor, I think you'd be perfect for this one.
So I think the first thing that you need to do whenever you see, you wouldn't see the problem with misinformation is you don't know it's misinformation when you first see it. You just see a big headline, you're just like, whoa, I can't believe that. You need to stop right there. And you need to go back and be like, I can't believe that. Why do I think that? Why? You got to gut check yourself sometimes when you see some crazy claims out there. And the problem is that going back to what I was saying earlier about, we don't have, I didn't have very good schooling in math, and that led me to kind of fall behind my other peers who did have good teachers. We're not really taught how to critically engage with the information that's given to us, right? So when I say critically engage, I mean to pause, think for a second. And when I say think, I mean, does this make sense?
Taylor, can I interject really quickly?
Go for it, yeah.
And just to understand where what that information is coming from. Is this a fact? Is this an opinion? Or is this someone's belief? It is so important that we understand those three concepts, and a lot of people don't. So a fact is something that's been tested, retested, proven, and it is true. It is an objective truth. It is true whether you believe it's true or not. Just like gravity. Whether you believe in gravity or not, if you jump off a building, you will fall. And then opinion is their observations that you've made or their conclusions that you've come to. But opinions are also based on fact. You've reviewed the facts and you've come up with this opinion. Opinions are based in fact. And then there's a belief, and a belief has no basis at all. I could believe that I could fly, and by God, you can't tell me I can't if I believe it.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think why misinformation can be so effective is because people are separated from, these scientific institutions that we've got that are coming out and saying wild stuff like, yeah, we think it might be a graviton that creates gravity. And people just go, you're just making stuff up at this point. I don't believe that. And they don't have any connection to the data because there's no way for them to effectively process the data. Because again, all these people, us scientists, we've had years and years of schooling to make these observations rigorously. That is a muscle that you have to train. You have got to work hard at being that rigorous. It's boring. It doesn't always make sense. It can be really frustrating. And so when you come out with basically what's the end results of these fancy, scientists say that this is happening within the next 30 years, it's kind of like, where did that come from? Because we just don't see that process.
But it came from some poor grad student sitting in front of their computer, biting their nails to blood and crying every night of the week. So we don't see, and I think Taylor made a great point, we don't see the work behind these theories. We kind of feel like they just come out of nowhere, but they come from not just the work that grad student did, but the work that somebody did 400 years ago that led us to the point of understanding where that grad student was able to ask the question that they're currently working on. So science isn't a today thing. It's not just what we know today. It's not like somebody just laid down and jumped up and dreamed up something. It's accumulative, and it's built on principles and on work that was done by, it's built on work that was done by Sir Isaac Newton. It's built on work that was done by people hundreds of years ago that we built on.
Let me interject right there. At the same time, so we all herald Sir Isaac Newton as the inventor of calculus, but what a lot of people haven't heard about is that at the same time that Isaac Newton was working on his calculations to create calculus, there were other people in Europe who were doing the exact same things. He just managed to publish his manuscript first. Same thing with the theory of evolution. Darwin was not the only guy thinking about this sort of stuff.
I remember
And so
that.
you gotta, it's almost like this huge tree that people are working on concurrently. Like, you got a guy over here who's working with some data. You got a guy over here who's working with the same set of data. And so it's really more of like an ecosystem of people interacting with each other, sharing knowledge, reading the same sources, that sort of thing. They're coming together across, thankfully now we can talk to each other over the internet. But back then, they were swapping letters, they were going to universities, they were traveling all over the world to make these observations and share their observations.
Right.
So, the best way is to do your research. Don't just believe anything anyone tells you. Look at credible sources. And when I say credible sources, I mean peer-reviewed sources. The reason being is because those peer-reviewed sources have people constantly trying to poke holes in them. So look at peer-reviewed sources, do your research, and then form your opinion. And whatever opinion that you come to after you've done your research, that's for you. That's yours. That's for you to have and deal with. But it's based in fact and not just some wackadoodle belief.
Or just seeing a shocking headline and going, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And they're just telling it to everybody else. I would say if you see a shocking headline and you're like, that's amazing or that's crazy, you should go look for articles about that particular topic from other websites, maybe even websites or media channels that you're not necessarily you're kind of like, these guys I can't trust. Be okay with having your mind changed is the fundamental principle of that. Be okay with having your mind changed.
And you said a word that I feel like a lot of people have gotten away from. That's not in school. Articles. Now people don't look to literature. They don't look to articles and stuff like that. If I want to know something, I'm guilty. I'm going to go to TikTok or YouTube and I'm just listening to other people talk about it. And that's not credible. I mean, it's not credible. Well, some could be, but that's where people get misinformed because this video got 5 million likes. You know what I'm saying? Like that's so they think that that's true. But that's where people do their research now. It's from other people on the internet instead of going to articles and stuff.
But I mean, if that's how you're gonna do it, because far be it from me to tell somebody to change. If you're not gonna research the material, at least research the person who you're listening to.
Right.
At least figure out if it's a credible person, somebody who is knowledgeable in the field that they're speaking on.
Right, but I'm sure y'all probably have classmates or people that went to school with you, and y'all may not share the same views on certain things, right? Or do y'all
Here's
always...
a perfect example. Taylor's a diehard Catholic. I'm agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
So we have very different views on...
Yeah, like science, like you said, it's factual. So at some point, y'all have to agree on facts when it comes down to science, right?
Because when you start dealing in science, your beliefs aren't relevant. They have nothing to do with it. You believe what you want. We're basing this off the facts, off of things that were proven, things that couldn't be disproven, and experiments that have had repeatable results and have stood the test of time. What I believe in personally, it doesn't have a thing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We're dealing with objective truths that are true, whether I believe them or not.
And I love that because like I see now why people say science and math goes hand in hand. Like I said, I love science. I mean math, right? I've always loved math and numbers. I could not put together like people's like, well, how do you like math and don't like science? Because it's different, but it goes hand in hand. And I can tell you, I think that for me, what makes sense of it going hand in hand is that they are factual. Like they say, numbers don't lie. Science and research and factual theories and laws, they're research stuff that can be proven as to how they come up with the results. So those are factual things. You can argue English, you know, you can argue almost anything else, but when it comes down to math and science, you can't argue, you know, to a certain extent, right?
2 plus 2 is always going to be 4. Unless you do
Not
some
according
really
to
fun.
Terrence Howard, it's not.
Uh-oh.
We're not talking about Terrence Howard. It is. Sure.
No, but seriously, what math is like the language that we use to understand the universe is what it is. It's like the fundamental language that a scientist use to understand the universe and the physical world
Right.
around us.
You can boil everything down to calculations at its core
At the
level.
end of the day. Yeah.
Whether
And
it's
that's what I
physics
love
or
about math.
chemistry. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's all just numbers at some point.
Yeah.
Wow. So why do some people distrust science, and how can we bridge this gap between scientists and, you know, just regular people, as far as bringing more awareness to the importance of science and why everybody should be at least knowledgeable of the scientific method and how it works?
We definitely have to do a better job of communicating what we're working on with the public. And a lot of scientists do a good job of that. Like when I was working as a research technician, we would often have, you know, essentially, you know, days of the month where we would present to the public and be like, here, open house, come on in, come check out what we're working on. You know, they talk about the ivory tower of, you know, science, and it's like, no, it should not be an ivory tower. It should be a big, beautiful park that you can walk around it and see all the cool stuff that's happening in it. And so that's the problem is like, you know, we're also very disconnected. We get these headlines, we get these news articles, we get these people telling us what to think and feel, and we just don't engage anymore. Either the scientists don't engage because they're all busy like, I gotta work on my, I gotta get this peer review done before the deadline, otherwise I might lose funding. And the people are just kind of sitting here and go, they're talking about gravitons again. Because they don't get to go into that lab and see them like, you know, here's the math, and break down the math. We've got to be better communicators, because the people out there that are spreading all kinds of misinformation or disinformation are just not really good information on TikTok or YouTube or whatever.
But they are great.
They're really good at disseminating that information. They're really good at telling those stories.
And another thing that we have to do, that we must do, is expose our children to scientific thought at a very early age. The scientific method is not only a way to look at science, but it can just be applied to your everyday life. When you come across a situation, the first thing you do is observe what's going on. The next thing you do is get some information to figure out what's going on. The next thing you do is come up with a plan. You do it. If it didn't work out again, hopefully you don't do it again. We use aspects of the scientific method in our daily life, but we have to expose our children to science. We have to, you know, let them know that math isn't scary. We have to tell them that, you know, you can be a rapper or a basketball player or play football or go dance or whatever, but you can also be a scientist or an engineer or an astronaut. We have to expand our kids' horizon so that they don't look at science as, oh, this is boring or this isn't fun. They see that, oh my goodness, because once you know what you're looking at, there's nothing more mind-blowing.
Yep, you've got to promote the innate curiosity we all have as people. You've got to make people want to know more about what's going on with it. Like, again, my background, I started off in musical theater. And the reason why I became a geologist, beyond, you know, musical theater being, I wasn't that good at it. I'll just be honest, I wasn't that good at it. I was curious about rocks. I'd spent all this time around, you know, going to the mountains and rock climbing, going to the beach and playing with sand. And it's just that natural curiosity that my parents fostered within me just kind of eventually caught fire one day. And I was just like, I must know more. I must know more about why things are the way they are. And that's what led me down this path.
And for me, I started off, well, I always wanted a career in science, but I wanted to be an astronomer and I wanted to know the secrets of the universe. After a couple physics classes, I realized that it was a little bit too abstract for me. So I wanted, you know, be able to get a job, first of all. but besides that, I wanted to be able to take the knowledge that I gained of Earth, of its systems, of environmental stewardship, and actually use them in a practical way in the real world. Not saying physics, theoretical physics isn't practical. I'm saying it goes above my head.
Wow. So what can people do to, bring more awareness to how important science is? I know you said, we can definitely instill it more in our kids, but what are some things? Because I don't see a lot of people talking about it. And I don't know if it's because of, the way the social media algorithm works or whatever, but I don't see people doing like workshops to bring awareness
you're doing
to
it
science.
right now.
You are doing it right now. That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. You gotta put the information out there for people to understand how science works, for them to not think that scientists are these sinister people that are just making up stuff and trying to tell them what to do, but that, these are science is the driving force at this point of our society and our technological advancements, and it's not something to be feared. It's something to be embraced so we can look ahead. Think about if more people wanted to look at how much progress we've made right now with people not really interested. Now think about how much faster we could move forward if more people wanted to get STEM careers.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how the trajectory of people like you doing this. Like I know when y'all went to school, the geology department wasn't a large department, right? It was pretty small. So it's like, if there is no one that wants to study this stuff, what does that look like for the world?
It's not the world, it's America. We just ship them on in from China or India or places where people enjoy science.
I mean, but seriously,
realistically, that's what we're doing now. We're outsourcing a lot of our scientific work.
Because it's not enough Americans that's interested in doing it. And I had the same problem. I've done a couple of podcasts about mental health awareness, and it's just a lack of people wanting to do the work. And I don't think people really understand the effect that has on them. A lot of people dismiss things because they ain't got nothing to do with me. But if they understood, they could probably raise up the next Albert Einstein or, something like that. Just bringing the awareness. So I'm definitely inspired to bring, keep this type of conversation in rotation, on the round table. So I would love to bring y'all back one by one, or bring your friends, whatever. Like this is
absolutely,
a great conversation.
Yeah, sure.
And we can talk about more specific things. Like, what is one thing that the world is probably, people are probably in danger of, what can I say? Like something like littering that people don't think about. Yeah, like what is that overall, that bigger effect of everybody doing it?
Okay, you know what one thing that people aren't aware of that's super important, and Taylor, you're really gonna agree with this. People think that we have endless supplies of fresh water to drink, and we do not. And that's one thing that people aren't aware of, right? And people are blissfully ignorant, because if people knew how close some places come to running out of fresh groundwater to drink, it would actually be pretty scary.
Yep, there are several aquifers, which are basically underground, reservoirs of water where the water is moving through the rock and soil, where people have been pumping out the water for agriculture and whatnot so long and so consistently that the ground itself, because you're moving the water that's holding, it's creating pressure, right? It's holding all that mud and rock and dirt up. It's literally sinking. There are places in California where it's sinking dozens of feet over decades. Las Vegas is sinking. There's a valley in California that's sinking, and these are substantial things. There are aquifers out in the breadbasket of the United States where people are assuming, we've got plenty of groundwater because we've got all this rain and whatnot coming on. Well, unfortunately, those places are losing their groundwater slowly but surely as well. And on the North Carolina and the East Coast, you're pumping out all this fresh water, and you're near the ocean. You pump out all the fresh water. What you get then is salt water coming in.
And then like
and
up
ruining
here,
your crops and farms.
and up here in
Mm.
Boston, we have a lot of concrete cover. So a lot of our fresh water that could be getting penetrated to replenish these aquifers, it just runs off. So
Wow.
It's like holding a plate over your plant as you're trying to water. It's just like
yeah.
you're not doing anything. You're just making a mess.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, it's interesting, but I mean, it definitely makes sense. And it's stuff like I said, people don't think about. They have I see people doing like movements to, do stuff like that. And to me, I be feeling like it's a small issue, but I'm like, if somebody thought to do it, it must be a bigger issue than what I know. And something like running out of fresh water, people think that the earth just replenishes everything. No, we have to take care of the earth. And
Exactly.
we don't take care of the earth, and if we don't, the earth is not going to take care of us.
This
Right?
is for right now. This is the only planet we got. We better take care of it.
And we only have a finite amount of fresh water. We have what's in the rivers, lakes, and aquifers, and what's locked up in the ice in the Arctic regions.
That's about it. Yep.
That's it.
And so going back to your original question of what can people do, it's just follow your curiosity, engage with that questioning part of yourself that like, I want to know more. And then when you start pulling on that thread and following those chains of curiosity, number one, don't be afraid to have your mind changed. And number two, challenge what you already know or with what you think you know.
And number three, come to terms with the fact that you just might not know everything.
Mm-hmm.
That part. Yeah. That's interesting. So y'all both have master degrees in this. So I always ask my guests, like what's your end game? Like why did you get into this, and what is it at the end of it all do you hope to achieve?
I'm attempting to manage. Well, one, I'm trying to get paid. First and foremost, that's step number one. Step number two is accumulate experience working with the federal government so that eventually I can potentially make my way into the federal government and start affecting more change that's going to benefit our communities, our country, and ultimately our planet as well.
Wow. That's awesome. What about you, Felicia?
45 years old. I have no more ambition. I'm living a dream, baby.
So you just go work and retire and live it up, right?
Ride it out and come back to North Carolina and buy me a house.
Taylor, you said you was in Florida. What part of Florida you in? I got a lot of colleagues down there in the Orlando area.
I'm up in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think I have one colleague in Jacksonville as well, but yeah, most of them are down there in Orlando. That's where you are permanently now?
Permanently is an interesting word. I'm here right now, and I want to be here for as long as I can.
I know that's right. I was considering Florida, but I don't know. I like the climate changes. I like the bipolarness of the North Carolina. But is there anything else that we did not touch on that y'all want to touch on? I know you brought up getting paid, and before we went live, you was talking about science don't always pay good, or it depends on where you're working at or something. Like, what are some of the lower end paying science jobs, and what are some of the highest end paying jobs? This may attract some people that like to make money to get into this field.
So I'll give you an example across the field of geology. I was recently making about $18 an hour, which is not bad, but it's not great, working as a research technician. On the opposite side of the geology scale, I used to work for oil and gas, and I made a lot more money doing that. So effectively, science is used. If you want to make money in science, you take your scientific knowledge and you go to the companies and fields that are trying to make money. So oil and gas, mining, that sort of thing. And when you go to the more of the environmental or cerebral or academic side of things, that's where you start to see the pay grades drop a lot. Like I'm right now with my government job, I'm in the middle right now. I'm lower middle class, but because we've got both the environmental and also, working with companies that are trying to make money, these contractors, you're kind of meeting in the middle. And it's not a pretty good salary. The thing about people not making enough money on the more academic environmental side of things is because we need to get people to care. In America, we love to make money. That's our thing. We love to make money. And if it's not really making money, you don't necessarily care about it, which is why I go back to saying you've got to engage your curiosity. You've got to want to know about stuff. And when you start learning about stuff, more often than not, you end up caring about it. And when you have that basis of support, when enough people care about, say, particular environmental challenges, they're more willing to be like, yeah, go ahead, send my tax dollars to help us figure out why our water quality, here in Jacksonville is so poor.
So I work in like environmental science. I don't do much I don't do any geology. As a matter of fact, at this point, you could fancy me more of a chemist than a geologist because I do a lot of hazardous waste management. When I first started, I did hazardous waste management for a company called Veolia North America, and I believe I was paid like $27 an hour. I now sit as a research safety officer in the biotech industry doing private environmental work, and I'm like right at 41 an hour. I'm on salary, but it breaks down to about 41.
Wow. Oh, so it ranges just like anything. And there's different parts of, the United States pay different because you could probably do that job somewhere else and get paid less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with anything. Yeah.
It's all about supply and demand, as usual.
Right. So y'all heard it here from the professionals and the experts because I'm not. I learned a lot tonight. Like y'all really got me more interested in science. And so I'm definitely going to continue to work with y'all, let y'all come up here as long as y'all willing to bring more awareness to these matters that some people just really don't tend to think about. So I appreciate that. Anything else y'all want to say before I close out?
No, thank you for having us.
Yes, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'd love to come back on sometime.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank y'all for
next
coming
time
on.
We'll try to bring more of the cavalry with us.
Oh, that'll be great. And Erica said great information. Thanks for tuning in, Erica.
Thanks for being here.
As y'all know,
right.
Yes, if y'all want to join, be a guest, or if y'all have topics that y'all want to hear about, just send me an email at jointheroundtable.info@gmail.com. And be sure that you hit the subscribe button because every time I hit another 100 set of subscribers, I just gave away money last week. I'll give away some more money. So y'all subscribe and share and continue to follow. Thank you guys. And I will see y'all next week. Same time, same place with some different faces. Good night.